A Syrian producer working for the BBC has tweeted that a video of people treated for a chemical weapons attack was faked. What's behind his shocking revelation, and how can fake news be stopped from serving the pretext of certain political agenda in the future? And legal challenges are already emerging to fight President Donald Trump's declaration of a national emergency to get funding for his southern border wall. But is Trump really looking more long-term towards the next U.S. presidential election? Welcome to The Point, an opinion show coming to you from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. A BBC Syria producer tweeted last Wednesday that the video of people treated after an alleged chemical weapons attack in a Syrian town last April was staged. Shocking his nearly 20,000 Twitter followers and other media outlets, Riyam Dalati said, "After 6 months of investigation, I can prove without a doubt that the Doma hospital scene was staged." On April the 7th last year, a Syrian attack was alleged to have been carried out by the Syrian government on civilians in Doma. The footage of the so-called hospital scene captured international headlines, showing children being treated as victims of the attack. The video was used as pretext by the US, the UK and France to bomb Syrian government facilities and bases near Damascus. The BBC has reacted by insisting that this was the producer's personal view and that the attack did take place. Meanwhile, I made a video commentary on the subject over the weekend, which got more than 130 million readership on the Chinese social media. Why are ordinary people so emotionally attached by such a topic? How can such fake news be kept at an absolute minimum in the media wherever they are? Joining me from Moscow is Professor Alexander Lukin, head of the Department of International Relations at the National Research University Higher School of Economics, and from Philadelphia, the US, Blackburn Dwyer, president of the Grasshopper Group. Gentlemen, welcome to The Point. First of all, let me share with you the tweets of the Syrian producer, which has since become protected. They read as follows. Now, after almost 6 months of investigation, I can prove without a doubt that the Doma hospital scene was staged. No fatalities occurred in the hospital. All the white helmet activists and people I spoke to are either in Idlib or Euphrates Shield areas. Only one person was in Damascus. In fact, he went on to say one of the 3 or 4 people filming the scene was a doctor affiliated with Jaish al-Islam, a terrorist group. And the narrative was that there weren't enough doctors, but here is one filming and not taking part of the rescue efforts. Professor Lukin, what can you read from these tweets?
Well, nothing new. Everyone knew it was staged. All the experts knew that, and you know, there were reports about it at that time, and so it's just interesting that the BBC worker himself said that it was staged, kind of acknowledged it. So this is an acknowledgement of a lie, but basically all normal people knew that it was a lie.
Mm-hmm. Did this revelation, Brandon, come as a surprise to you? I mean, we here in the Chinese media or in the Russian media, indeed, as Professor Lukin pointed out, we have been asking questions and we have been kicking and screaming and trying to get people's attention to the many doubts in that piece of video, which obviously couldn't hold water. And yet, in the mainstream Western media, rarely were these questions asked. And even after this revelation was made by a BBC producer, you don't really hear much about it, right, on CNN or in BBC or any other mainstream Western media. Did this come as a surprise to you?
Well, let's separate this into a couple of pieces here. You're right. You're not hearing this in the mainstream media in the United States. Frankly, you're not hearing this outside of CGTN, RT, and a couple of other Russia-aligned international news outlets. What you are hearing is in April 30th, Russia sent people that were in that video to The Hague, and they claimed publicly that the video of survivors of the alleged chemical attack was staged. That story was widely reported. It was in Sky News, it was in BBC, it was in Reuters, it was in the AP, it was in Fox News, it was in CNN. So in terms of my colleague, Professor Lukin, he's correct that the idea that this video may have been staged was widely reported and has been widely regarded as potentially true. What we need to differentiate, though, is that the allegations that the video displaying victims of the attack may have been dramatized or staged is very, 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 very different than the idea that the attack itself was staged or that the allegations of use of chemical weapons is in any way undermined. What we're basically talking about is a video that was relatively unsourced, that came from rebel groups on the ground, that dramatized the incident, that did catch the attention of mainstream media. When you're talking about justifications for counterattacks and looking for stockpiles of chemical weapons, that evidence came out of U.S. national intelligence, French national intelligence, UK national intelligence, UN investigators, and a whole lot of other elements of the global community that had nothing to do with the video itself.
Are you sure that it has nothing to do with the video itself? And because what we are seeing, for instance, the US, UK and France military action bombing against so-called chemical weapons facilities in Syria came just days after this alleged attack in Douma. And if the attack really did take place, why do people have to stage? Why do people have to make it more dramatic, more sensational, Brandon?
Because we're talking about the court of public opinion, not necessarily U.S. national intelligence or national intelligence actors. It is true that dramatic images, that images of starving or dead children, motivate the public and give political cover to politicians that want to make certain actions or government leaders that want to make certain actions. I'm going to draw you to another tweet by Riyam Dalati that actually came out a week before this incident last April, and he showed two different images. One was of two children laying next to each other and they were dead after an attack. The second image was one that was widely circulated in the media that showed the same two dead children hugging and embracing in death. Now, the outcome was that groups on the ground realized that a hugging, embracing children would be a more powerful image, and so they doctored the image by moving the bodies of the children. Now, that's outrageous in terms of journalistic ethics to have accepted an image that had been doctored, but it's still two dead children. That's still powerful.
That's obscene. I don't know whether it matters. I don't know.
Loyal to Bashar al-Assad.
Brandon, I don't know whether it matters how you lie makes a difference, whether that makes a lie more acceptable or not. Professor
I don't think it does.
Professor Lukin, your point here.
Well, the fact is that American intelligence or British intelligence is saying something is not an argument here. I mean, they are working for their governments. They were told to engineer or somehow find a pretext for bombing, and they did. They did the same, for example, when they looked for a pretext for the Iraq war. So, and then now we all know that they lied. So the fact that intelligence community is lying is a fact. There's nothing wrong with that. But so what we should discuss here is not the behavior of the governments, Western governments, or intelligence communities, or special forces, or whatever, but why the Western media, the BBC, for example, which used to be a very professional and kind of more neutral TV station, why is it became an accomplice for the liars, and began very obviously taking sides, and for taking sides, they even want to falsify the facts and even the scenery. This is very interesting because it's not the first the first time they are doing it. For example, we hear about journalists who, was this American journalist who it turned out that all his reports were false and he just invented facts, or there was a German journalist who was doing it. I think this is because the media is now more and more becoming a tool of the ruling elite. It's in the contemporary world, it's losing its former position of a neutral observer. So that's what we need to discuss, not the behavior of the CIA,
Indeed,
which
I
works
think
for its government
yeah.
and tells what
Here comes my
what
question.
they should do.
Here comes my question. As you said, the BBC is famous for being neutral, is famous for being professional. They have a long-standing history as one of the most authoritative media outlets, and yet on such an important matter, it seems that at least they didn't do the work they need to do. What is missing here now that we're seeing this? Is it the professionalism of the journalist? Is it the judgment of the editor? Or is this still the biological defect that human beings have to simply believe what is presented in front of us, especially when children and when crying children and women are involved, or crying women are involved? Professor Lukin, once again.
Well, I think that the role of the media is changing. What the media people themselves think of themselves. They used to think of themselves as neutral kind of observer or reporter of the events. But now they think of themselves as kind of a tool of the ruling elite, of the ruling ideology. They think that they know, they're kind of, to use a communist word, they think of themselves as the avant-garde of the people. So they know how the people should behave, they know how the world should look like, and to achieve this aim, they think sometimes it's possible to lie. Basically, what they think that the end justifies the means.
Okay,
this
Brian,
is the old Jesuit principle.
Yeah, your time to give your argument, please.
I enjoy my colleague's point of view. I think being raised in the Soviet Union and Russia and seeing media from the inside of that country would give him this point of view. I think he's right, that media has become more and more biased, that our acceptance of them as cold, hard arbitrators of fact is not always true. And I think that in the world where we have social media and Twitter and video from on the ground, from confirmed sources or unconfirmed sources, that media tries to play catch-up a lot. And in this situation, they were trying to play catch-up. They were presented with a video that the authenticity of the source, at least, rebels on the ground, was confirmed. The authenticity of the content of the video was not. But the reality is the overall allegations, again, were more than this video. The OPCW itself has gone back to 2012 and dozens of times.
No. In this case, Brendan, I have to correct you here. In this case, Brendan, yeah, you talk about the OPCW. I have to mention that last July, the OPCW, the UN agency for the prohibition of chemical weapons, issued an interim report which ruled out the use of sarin gas. And at this moment, they have said, along with explosive residues, various chlorinated organic chemicals were found in samples from two sites for which there is full chain of custody, and yet there is no conclusion yet as any chlorine or chlorinated organic chemicals were used in this attack. So at this moment, we really have no evidence to prove that chemical weapons has been used. Okay, the Syrian government might have used chemical weapons in the past, but in this particular case, we are going to let facts speak. And yet the problem is the Western world...
Chlorine gas is a chemical weapon.
Yeah, but even if some traces are found, even if some traces are found,
90% of the chemical attacks in Syria are chlorine.
Even if some of the traces are found, it is too early to conclude that chlorinated chemical gas has been used here. I mean, we don't have an official word. Who has to be the judge here? But as I tell you, a couple of days after this video went out, the US, the UK, and France went and already bombed. You know, who's going to hold them back? What is missing there? Brandon, can you answer this question? Oh, is everybody going to go out and be their own judge and executioner? Yeah.
I think you have valid points about the speed in which reaction was taken. I think that we have to take into account the larger circumstances beyond this attack, in that since the end of 2013, when the UN, Syria, and Russia confirmed that Syria was going to destroy all of its chemical weapons, that there was broad evidence that there had been continued use of chlorinated weapons or in the conflict. Yes, this was the focusing event, and maybe they rushed to judgment on this one. I might agree with that. But overall, the 3 bases bombed, had been widely assumed and widely confirmed that there was some sort of illicit behavior going on in those areas, and the OPCW, the body that we all would like to have had full access to everything, had been denied access. And then Russia, 3 days after the bombing, said, oh, we were just about to give them access. The reality is we need to be looking at how we can protect everyone from chemical weapons. This is war. This is a conflict where over 500,000 people have died, and chemical weapons have been widely used on probably all sides.
Yeah, I get your point. Chemical weapon is a very important matter, is a very serious matter, but when you have an incident like this, to stage the scene of hospital treatment, is that the first step where things are going to get better? I doubt. But I really have to leave it there. Many thanks to my two guests there. I don't have much time left. We'll talk about it next time. Professor Alexander Lukin, head of the Department of International Relations at the City Higher School of Economics, and from Philadelphia, Blackburn Dwyer, president of Grasshopper Group.